Khenpo wrote a commentary in the Dorje Shokyu, the Rangpet Sutra. And one of the differences between Chan and Tibetan Buddhism was the interpretation of a particular passage that Chila Yangmi Nepar Sam Kepar Jaro. If I say it in English, then I kind of spoil the point. In China, that Sam Kepar Jaro was meant to generate like a semi nangwa, an actual state of mind. In Kamala Shila, Tibetan interpreters interpreted Sankhe Barjo as to generate Sankhe, like the mind of bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. So I'm wondering in Khenpo's own commentary how he interpreted this particular passage.
Between what?
So we have Chila Yang Minepar, Sankhe Barjo.
Chila Yang Minepar.
Chila Yang.
Shila,
so that Sankhe, does Khenpo interpret that Sankhe as in bodhicitta or Samgi Nang Kepa?
Dorje Chopa Chilso.
Dorje
Ta shirna Dorje Chopa do nge ngamandi yang chacha shimyo. Ni ta Dorje Chopa do so gunzup ko nawa ta na ta stoni ko tondam yi stonwa ni ga da tani pansan rimu tsirta huirna zig stomba ni zig so zenan zhe zge te ni ga da ri ga 냠다 다리 차게요 그모즈들이 대인은 니는 그 근데 샘께 빠진데 샘께 빠질라가 뭐네 빠 샘께 빠지긴도 타니 그원도 시나 다리 샘께 빠대요인데 그 돈담비 원도 시나 샘께 빠다 돈담비 샘께 빠질라가 뭐네 봐 대인나 응수 니 샘께 때라 근접 샘께 따는 돈담 샘께 아니요 근접 샘께 띠 샘전 탐치다 샘께게 돈들 생기티 띵오 랑제 마트바 고송디 데네 다리가 다 사당원양 저거 똑바문도 기르 동니 거다와 대제거래 대인디 대다리 지라 만네 진대양 심케기도 다리가 직동바 닌 진도 나와다 나와인 진도 동아인교 다 되니까 다리 돈덤다나 그 근접거 아이와 다리가 마신이나 도지 쇼파가 중 고르가 참아다나 소 나와다 동아니가 다리가 그 요비 차가지 좀 매비 차가지니까 그 작은 로거래. 대인나 다리 장장을 쓰거나 하자. 갈릭 보여서래.
Yes, generally I've taught that before, and the way we understand the passage that you make reference to is understood in the context of the relative or the interpretable, which means appearances or phenomena, and then the absolute or the genuine, which means the empty nature of that phenomena. And so, as it mentions in the Diamond Sutra, then there is this interchangeability between the two. That form is empty, but emptiness is represented by form. And so, this brings up the way of understanding the interdependency between the two aspects of the awakened mind, the Semkit, the awakened mind. And that would be that from the point of view or the perspective of that which is interpretable, then there is the relative awakened mind, which corresponds to thinking of all sentient beings and such things. But from the perspective of the genuine or the absolute, there is nothing at all that is present there in terms of generation of anything. And so that is the fundamental nature of emptiness. And so, hence the interchangeability between the two, which is the relationship, which points out the relationship between the relative and the absolute, and that they are indistinguishable. And so that's the basic theme of the Diamond Sutra. And yet, of course, there's much more that could be said about the subject. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you very much. I'm wondering about Hashan's view and the relationship between Hashan and the Platform Sutra. And do you think that the Platform Sutra, do you think what Hashang was teaching in Tibet is captured in the Platform Sutra? And sometimes when I read the history about the Samye debate, I wonder if Hashang wasn't the best representative of Chan in Tibet. Maybe he wasn't really up to the debate. Or, or do you think that, I guess that's my question.
다때 로지가 있다나 드네 소파 잠나 밤교도 쪼도 가레그즈니 나때 티어네르급나 워이르크 고마가 따와 쪼이니나 드네 딱쪼 자거 그스타와즈다 자나 그스타와 드네 가레그즈나 차스 담제라요 나레 드네 자거 그스타와다가 자나 그스타와데다가 점타가 추고 파면은 말했다 썩고 파면이지 그래서 좀 된다야요 그래 다 깡따리양 땅 아주 때 마하야나가 다 로지가 나한테 처럼인데 파르칠 워이르 그 개와 아다 나마 좀면 저기다 스코라시기 시험사기 개와 총마다는 로몽으로 말 찾zon데 다사가 슬락한다 사미가 슬락한 거 좀매 참마 다송데 단 디모 김스 모에는 저런데 때니 때니나 오네가 지금 강스타리오나 다른 코니 소파시라 마야나다 소파시라 마야나 소파시디 까말라실레제니나 그 추스타와 간제 인제디 쿠스타와다 남카가 다리가 총친 발왔다데 인제 근데 남카가 총친데 다리 저 접아요 말에 저 토줘요 말에 근데 까말라실레다 남카금 토기 총들 따 디몬 통보즈레다 다때 도mer 가는 별네요. 도mer 다리 사는 별이요. 되님 탈간 혼주든 탈 사토가 다른 밥너리지. 다트나 다리 스타 쯧던 도지지나 누나 공어 망제네 야라요. 되네 다리가 그거 다 점지 다리 리김제다는 센도 시집 먹을 말은 밥군제지게. 그러는 뭐 지금 라스타와 남카뱀 토지는 리김제 역시 이잡고 손게. 단 내다 오공박지그레제 뜻이에요. 되니나 다 다스당 수도 있기로나 양 지금 가리가 따와 친 통보즈도 셔되는 게가 좀 못주바요 사례 또 년카진 사례 근데 그런 수소바대는 지금 다리 추제 교른데 저런 돌잖아 다리긴 도거나 지금 게와 다리가 못주세기도 메이크 야본도 되나 nghiệp 상로다나 당원에 지금 때 지금 간레즈레 로지가 그 점선 요니나 자가 장기 점선가 요나라 그 다리양나 그 자사 몸보스 요지레 상고요.
Yeah, in terms of Hashang Mahayana and the Platform Sutra, then I think there are many similarities. But for example, when you think about the Samye debate, then there are assertions that because in Tibet the Madhyamaka view was being primarily emphasized, that perhaps Hashang lost that debate due to politics that were also going on simultaneously between India and China, and how
요래 알았어. 공부 가르칠 때 딸진도 진짜 사대세요. 뭐를? 뭘?
correct this point. Yeah, well, what Rinpoche said was that, as I just translated it, that primarily in Tibet, the Madhyamaka view was being emphasized. And at the same time, there were political influences and spiritual influences that were going on, which may have somehow played out or influenced the defeat of Hajang during the time of that debate, which was based on the view. And so that had to do with, for example, the Tibetan practice or emphasis of accumulating virtue at the time having declined to the point where it was almost non-existent. And so the process of circumambulating and prostrating and going through different outer practices to accumulate virtue and merit had declined to the point where in the great Suklakongs such as Samye and Lhasa and these temples, they were no longer even offering butter lamps. And so therefore it seemed that when Kamalashila spoke to Hajang Mahayana, he asked him, well, if your view is so high that these acts of virtue are no longer necessary, that they become irrelevant, then it's like, you've presented your view to be like space, like the Garuda bird that's soaring in space, that's free to soar, that there's no need to do anything else, there's no need to accumulate any other good deeds. But given that your view is so high, like this Garuda, the Garuda would have had to have taken off from some earthly location. And although soaring in the space of the sky, that Garuda is going to have to land back upon an earthly location at some point in time. And so that indicates that your view must have come from somewhere, and that it's gradually going to lead to somewhere, which is similar to why Guru Rinpoche made the famous statement, although the view I present is as lofty as the space, that the law, the infallible truth of the law of cause and result, must be analyzed and practiced like counting grains of sand. And so, no matter how high the view may be, virtue still should be accumulated to accompany that. And so, I found from my own understanding of this that in the Platform Sutra, it does not ever make reference to the fact that virtue should not be accumulated. And I thought that that was very good. In terms of exactly why he lost the debate, according to timing, it could have been for another reason, as I said, which combines politics into the situation as well as the spiritual understanding of what he was actually trying to present.
You mentioned that the extraordinary preliminaries of the Wendro are a very effective way of preparing a practitioner for engaging the Dzogchen Khenpo practices. And I just wondered if you think that any other practices could also prepare someone to engage with the Dzogchen Khenpo, or is it only that specific set of Wendro practices?
Dzogchen Khenpo dun tukjide soksag zhiba takbi larji stodun nami shirnu konale yin zayda na taksongzhi tsok zogji zhiba vizhangji devzhinda dari stodun nami shirnu dandi tso dari ga tso shunzhog nana dati harchirda dari songyonzhi dayini na Dzogchen Khenpo da dangsang su jiga 당럽 근무 망보스 그 지금 뭐 반선 잔자 있는 길근다 로만 잠님 있는 데 임바샤나던 잠님 있는 내가 소용 캐나이나 레타는 그 Dzogchen Khenpo 장강 좀 타가 장강 뭐 많이 배웠는데 전에나 전에 똑바당 담비 라미 쭉 신럽대 전에 스카라당 담바 따빠당 담비 로미 이담 호용조 때라 전에 로마가 지 소란데 기타는 기바 시교인데 하장다리 깔치 모두 송지 대내나 그 다 문조 데라 탐문거 문조 다 탐모 많이 비 문조 몽조 적교인데 조바 첨보 데라양 그러나 양 링아 역선 그 탐모 많이 비 문조 적교인데 대 차가양 소리다 대 차기는 그 조바 첨보였나 그 신럽 그 싸와다나 대전들 격그 다리 그 냥도 여러 오용지 단도 소그 참마가 그 싸왕마다 소고 다리 그 라마나 기바다 수른데 라마다리 산지 몸통 그 답반적 기원도 하장까지 치고는데 너 당상 다 지금 당상 그 시험 받자 그 소이나 지금 하는 건 잠님 그 따와래 이제는다 딘 잠님도 노라 그 따와서래 맞수 엄마수 있는 자가 잠님 있는 자가 잠님 고사스 금 냠나랬다 잠 맘님 발 고사스 그 라미 지그 똑바다나 로미 지그 똑바니가 잠님 거나 하장 다리 까모려 상고요.
Yes, success on the path of Dzogchen Khenpo is dependent only upon accumulation of merit, purification of obscurations, and receiving blessings from the mind stream of a realized master. And so we find that in the teachings of Dzogchen Khenpo, primarily points to the preliminary instructions on how to accomplish the accumulation of merit, the purification of obscurations, and the receiving of blessings from the mind stream of a realized master. And so, unfortunately, these days, for Dzogchen Khenpo, there are many who feel or who hold the view that they are equal to their teacher of Dzogchen Khenpo, that student and teacher are on the same level. Well, inherently that may be the case, but according to the extraordinary or uncommon tenets of this system, then the way that the transmission is effective is that it's passed from the realization of a master to a fortunate disciple. A fortunate disciple means a disciple with faith and devotion. And this is a very important point, that the blessings of the lineage, the transmission, are going to transfer through the connection of realization, someone who's realized that, into the mind of a faith-bound disciple. And so therein lies the essence of why mundro, or preliminary practices, occur. And in Dzogchen's own system, Dzogchen has its own system of preliminaries. So there are outer or common preliminaries, and then there are uncommon Dzogchen preliminaries, which also have these two categories of the common and the uncommon sections. And so across the board, but specifically the uncommon way to connect with this lineage is to realize the wisdom realization that the master has realized. And that comes by the transference of blessings, as I just explained. And so not only is the disciple able to become as realized as the master, but this also enhances one's capacity while one is practicing. And so it's very important, it's crucial to know how to see the master as a Buddha, as an awakened being, and then to supplicate with faith and devotion to receive the wisdom blessings. So it's a great mistake to think that one is the same as one's Dzogchen teacher. Of course, we're all equal from the point of view of humanity. Yes, this is true. But when it comes to the realization of a Dzogchen master and what's happening in one's own mind as a disciple, then that's not at all the same. This is a completely different issue. So that's what I'm speaking about.
당겼다 왔어요. 손이 기도가 일찍자가 그런지 손을 그래서 얘나 그래서 조파 챔버들은 운동 상태 맞아. 저는 속천기 따와 너무 많이 봐. 그래서 우리 이제 가르게 우리 마사는 한다 따와 그 사고 인마당 공부 영락 직자를 교육 권한이 논생각보다 영원히 심해뜨고 상대 맞아. 근데 뭐 영락 교육 많이 받나고 다양한 이제 적신이 운으로 상대 맞아. 아니 무리를 하면서 집 공소만 가르치는 게 있는데.
Can you say that in English? Like sum it up? So everyone can understand what your question was, please.
In Platform Sutra, we have this seven gradual approach, and which says that we have this seven gradual approach because it's based on students, not based on Dharma teaching. And then we also said that this seven approach, second view, is based on the kin faculty students. So this is profound. And then which is that Nippon which is also based on Dodorum which is writing. It says this is just a kind of thinking sort of revision. It's not really, there is no profound. And then we just said that this is kind of preliminary practice of Dzogchen. So this is not really kind of Dzogchen practice. So I want to know what really this is.
그래서 다 근데 실나 추 왕도 신이나 그 추대라 산지가 추대 되네 왕본 뭐가 판도비 미차가네 추대라 다리가 되네 캬브르메 좀 도고 쇼나요 손데 생각 쇼나요 손데 강스타리안나 샘친라 판도 시 막도즈메요 말 데네나 회나 Dzogchen ge chuga semchina pan ma togne na te chu zap mo mare. Yang do shuk ge chuga dari chula pan togne na te korang la te na dari chu ha chang zap mo re. Te na chu ge ngone na dari tar kim do ge na na song tar dari chu de la dari ge ta chapre me ze na dari chu sa re sam. Te ne ganza ge wang de shine na do shuk na do ge kap na ya ram gi wa ta chi chi ra song re. Nga gi kap na ya ren gi wa ta chi chi ra song re. Dzogchen ge kap na ram gi wa ta chi chi ra song re. 원밤 조건나야 다리 가직 당보니 디직제 다 가직 당보네 원벌 보인제 원밤 조건 감나야 송어래 가직 당보니 디직제 디인디 땅이 네 대랑디 차트거나 네 랑데 인제 사로고요 말에 쾌바 조거 송난 된다 요너레지 체 남발라 다리가 다 파르칠 다리 주시 되네 랑랑 소소 샤바톤 거라 되네 담 쾌바 건거 공바드 간제젠드 그바 수수 송철 몽몽즈드나 되네 다리가 저려래 디는거 네 따츠르드 치르제나 추 라면라 몽보르다 되는 타트든 가라요 삼에 그제죠 다 니문이 있나데 대막도 다리 그바 조고 송출 문자 몽보즈든 다가 넘버 소자다 넘버 소 라랑 소소 왕보단 탐바가 랑게냠슬레네 되네 다리가 공방 가르메트 죽삼나야 총너를 공방 가라다드 죽삼나야 총너를 대막도 제마 대랑이 지 쇼크직도 주게 나랑 그좀 탄데 인지기다 제요 말에 다림 직도 다리 공방 닝운이 난 가라요 사마 커제 이나 그바 소소 송주는 된란도 제기 다 띵이 따뜻해.
Yes, from the perspective of the Dharma, of the actual doctrine, in respect to Buddha's doctrine, then the fact that it has the capacity to benefit the many faculties of beings poses no difference. There's no discrepancy there, right? It says in sutra, it says in mantra, that these doctrines are meant to benefit sentient beings across the board. And so, for example, if Dzogchen's teaching is not benefiting sentient beings, then that's no longer profound. That's no longer qualifying as Dzogchen teachings. If Sutra's doctrine is not benefiting beings, then it's not qualifying as a doctrine that is profound and capable of reaching out to meet the needs of beings. And so the perspective of the doctrine having that capacity is something that is not differentiated by any of the different vehicles. It's just the same. Now, the difference comes in terms of the individual practitioners who must pursue according to their faculties or their acumens. And so, therefore, in Sutra, there are those who fall into the category of the gradualists and those who fall into the category of being the instantanealists. In mantra, it's the same. The gradual developers, the instantanealist realizers. In Dzogchen, there are also these two categories. In Abhidharma, there's reference to Kechik Dongboneng, which means from the beginning there has been this instantaneous realization. So there's reference to that category as well. So what I've presented here in this short lecture is just what different scholars say and different facts about the traditions that we've been discussing. But it's certainly something that needs to be researched, and you need to reach your own conclusion based on the views that are presented. And if you're going to do that in a way that there's no contradiction, then fine. If it becomes contradictory, then fine. But it's something that can be brought together in a comprehensive way, then one is on track in terms of understanding that when it comes to the Buddhist teachings and these descriptions of the lineages that are in that category, that there's no difference in terms of the basic premise of how it benefits all beings, no matter who they are, but that there are different distinctions based on the needs of the individual practitioners. And so this has not been a presentation of my particular view, but it's been a presentation of the facts about the tradition.
I think you had your hand up first if you wanted to go first.
But you can go ahead.
Okay. I'm honored to be able to hear your presentation today. And on the other hand, I'm also shocked and a bit flabbergasted by your critique of some of the methods that we used in the modern study of the religion in the United States and Europe and other parts of the world. And in particular, and I can only speak for myself here, I'm not a scholar of Tibetan Buddhism. But in my study of Buddhism, in my academic practice, I'm not concerned with karmic retribution. I'm not concerned whether it serves to propagate the Buddha Dharma or not. And I'm not concerned whether it's helpful for my own practice or for the practice of others. So given that is, at least for me and for many colleagues I know in their work in Buddhist studies, as they study in this institution and other institutions, I'm curious, from your point of view, is there any value or benefit to this mode of engaging in the study of Buddhism that seeks to study it as it is embedded in historical, cultural, and literary context?
Chernambagwena Samlo Ramana Mombo Yore. They nam tachik the Chu Tartaptana, the Nichi, Tendra Manayan Chore. Reta Nitiran the Revaji Kitichirizena, Matsu Nang Chu Nangayan, where na Nakshoko Chuna and Nimo Jimjigina, the Matsu Poyer Katari Turgin, de La Satrun Shikidana, Poyer Katari Surgin Tetso Jimjik Shiki. Bernard Gumba and Gumba Susona, the Nachuga Rolik Gore, Tin Rolik the Korgore, 당상 야커 잠바가 나츠 보바가 더 로닌 차에 지롱디 나츠 소르긴나 저총시 그만도 소르긴 데라 도지시 근데 로닌 그나나 나츠 보바가 샤가 좀 멋진 그 그런 거 좋다서 그러네나 된다 요 말에 대당 자장그 너쇼고 또 개발 속에 있는 나츠 보그 정리라 짐직시는 짐직시 쳐래 빼요 버래 대저 출그 따빠가 원듯이 짐직시는 총제 랑근 소화가 원듯이 나나 되네 지 레가 죽주오다나 된다게나 대양 다리 쳐래 레당 가서 추근나 아무스 그 추가래도 소르긴 거 타나 에 만자와가 되네 담보 되네 럭처 다리가 담보요래 된 소이나 니소이나 대랑이 레가지기다 치르제나 대랑다나 뭐뭐보지요 말다 이나야 다 지마 다리가 되네 고스코 쇼나 되네 잠바 길근 소라 되네 무엇득니 레바 지삼고요 대니나 다른 것도 야나크리나 베나 다리 가리가 샤츠움도 되네 체이가 20라마 아직이요래 대코 다리 샤츠움 거티 hlopcha chemo go 다리 모름 바가 샤츠움 거 나온 적인지 네 그런 치도 뜨게 다죠 20라마스 이게 더 저기 미 게르크 냠슬린 게즈레 때 던라시 론 말에 초랑아가 말은 가랑 대 판탄선 제 교든라 마조제 지마 그런 것 때문에 다리 오고말 겐 뭐보는 뭐지 오고말 겐데 ger송 다 대단 자와가 되네 짐직 받소 있나 되네 다 당상 종 작친 몽보즈 되네 더 다리 짐직 쉐가 그게 때나 다른 시 잘노 차르다 다 지마 대다리 상로즈 땅또 삼고요 대 막독 다리 추고 쇼고 간제레 칼레네나 가서 지스 예랑아요 막독 제면나 대라지 거바다나 대라지 마무바 쩨메 알아 다때 저런 그 전직 시기고 그 다리 때 시스탕래와 추대 간제 전직 시는 되니 전직 시는 그 때문에 점적 가서 더 막도 되면 전직 시는 뭐 요래 때 반바 요새야 요래 반바 맨내는 당상 멤다 다리 조이 처령나야 약간 뭐 럭키 그 전직이 시를 거래 대 다리 추대양 지 나간 잠을 비슈실 뭐 요래 땡이 제식만도
Yes, that's very important, for you to bring up these points and think about it in this way. To reiterate, my intention for saying what I did is because I wanted to make the point clear that in Buddhism, in the vehicle of Tantra, and as that pertains to our Tibetan tradition, there's a way of researching that and relating to that that should be carried out according to the tradition of the lineage. That's the point I was making. Like, for example, when documentaries are made about monasteries or traditions, oftentimes the documentaries may overly exaggerate aspects about a culture, let's say the Tibetan culture, which could have the potential to damage or mislead the viewer's understanding of what that culture really is, right? And so that's an ordinary example, but because the tantric tradition is based on faith and devotion, so from that point of view it's very spiritually oriented, and there's a way to connect with that, then that will bring forth the value of that tradition so that it won't be sullied and it won't be damaged. But there's certainly plenty of scriptures to research and study where that is not the case at all. And so, therefore, for example, to study the Umagen and other, classic texts such as this, the Ornament of the Madhyamaka, and other translations and commentaries, this would be highly appropriate. There was one Chinese disciple who was going to put the Geshe Lama, Triya Geshe Lama, do you know what that is? It's an advanced Dzogchen text which is based on inner practice. And so it's actually a practice manual. And to hear the instructions on what it means, one has to be empowered and receive pointing out instructions according to the tradition. So this Chinese professor was going to put that in his curriculum for higher studies. And I was flabbergasted because that's something that is just totally unacceptable. Why? Because it's for inner practice. It doesn't belong in that category. In other words, you've got the wrong text for your category of learning and educating. So that's a mistake. And I pointed that out to him, and so he changed it and he put the ornament of the Madhyamaka in its place. That's perfect. And so those kinds of adjustments need to take place by researchers. And this is something that if I have the opportunity to say directly to them, of course here this is just a small group where I just happen to express my feelings very openly, but I certainly would not hold back to express them again to other professors, because I just see it as being important and true. And any other studies that you are undergoing to educate yourself, I rejoice in that, and please continue. In no way do I ever want to discourage anyone from doing that. I just wanted you to understand the point of the context, which hopefully is clear. And now one final question.
Excuse me, can I ask one tiny question? I have two actually. So is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. So Dzogchen speaks of straying and return. Is that similar to going back to the source, the Fan Zhao Hui Yuan? That's number one. And Shen Shu says there's dust in the mirror. Hui Neng says there's no dust in the mirror. What would Dzogchen say?
Do you speak Chinese?
I do.
Can you tell him in Chinese?
Oh, so, let's see. Rinpoche La Tukcheche, Do Kikor, Gyahar, actually, my Tibetan's a little better than my Chinese, so can I turn my Tibetan, please? So, Gyalagi Lama, Shen Hui.
生锈
对不起，生锈，没啷个啷了，Pakchak Tramo Yore. Today, Yana Gilama Shenyang, Huinang, Melongi Nanga, Pakchak Tramo Yumare. Today,
够吗？他什么意思？你刚才听到没有？
Dzogchen la. So like the idea of platform sutra上 the 镜子上面
你省着吧？
哦对
对，
这镜子上面有灰尘。神秀讲镜子上面有灰尘。可是慧能讲镜子上面没有灰尘。跟大圆满说什么呢？
그래. 다때 내 친구 네 다르긴도 그나나 다른데 선쇼 저기도 점기 말해. 근데 회란 다리 직철 말해. 데 코니까 근데 다리 셔근고나 디 요메 그 다리 소파즈래. 다 까다리양 데 Dzogchen 게 있나? 그 혈고 응올라 디쳐라. 르들 라운징 게 아마트 파세게. 근데 때 상담 그 정도나 묘무와 라운징 그 이시인데요. 다때나 르들 라운징 다리가 르들 라운징 묘무의 라운징 이시 놓고 저기 다리가 르다나 혈니가 마트 바르지 잖아 다리 초거들 Dzogchen다가 다리 다른 때에 학바 여러 다리 직송을 되는 초래. 다때치기나 교 디바스 되네.
Just a short.
Just 이제 저다 되죠.
I have a very short question.
이치
Can I speak Chinese? 能不能请仁波切讲一下这个宗喀巴大师的菩提道次第广论和那个大圆满的这种修行方式的区别是什么
Indicate.
No, English.
What's the difference between the Lama Tsongkhapa's Lamrim teaching and Dzogchen teaching? The second question is, I have very strong faith of the Mopo Rinpoche, and Mopo Rinpoche and Lama Tsongkhapa, they are all emanation of Manchu Shri. And how come when I read the Lama Tsongkhapa's teaching and the Lamrim teaching, they're so different style?
기업 그쳐 제동.
저 그때 그 종합원을 무슨 바꿔야 되는데 지금 잡아는 딜레이프에서 모두 각을 했어요.
你跟杨明说
你
出来，看见了那个咖啡厅。
哎呀，
那米胖仁波切和那个宗喀巴大师，他们都是文殊菩萨的化身。但是我对那个米胖仁波切非常有信心。但是当我去读那个宗喀巴大师的教授的时候，觉得他们就简直像不同的一种风格。为什么差距那么大
？OK。其实当不说的，你等你就等你。
Yeah, in the Platform Sutra, the terms you were using, that means the gradualists and the instantaneous. And so it was a debate between how the gradualists view the dust on the face of the mirror versus the instantaneous. And so in Dzogchen Khenpo, the dust on the mirror is considered to be inherently non-existent. And according to Chen, then the dust on the mirror, it's likened to the fact that the delusion's nature is wisdom. So both mirror and dust represent inherent wisdom. And so the Dzogchen's interpretation of that both mirror and dust are non-existent, may be surpassing, but both describe it in this way.
Dzogchen Khenpo 다는 람럽 체포인가라 람럽 첨보의 노쇼고 다리 람거는 바소래. 근데 조바 첨보가 람럼도 조바 첨보 세명 알수 갑나 주모서 송요래. 근데 다 조바 첨보다 세명 알수니가 중근데 람럼 단자르고나 다른 다리 송카와 흥거름 첨보 대 다리고 저잖아. 근데 발치를 조바 첨보다는 근데 송카와 그 다리 람럼니가 람럼 흥거름니가 이하스도 죽기를 삼고. 근데 금chen mapam batana tsungkawa niga ga jahorin go chura re retana khoniga gomba nge tena tari ga ngara yo mare samka cherezena 금chen mapam jamso go song changma ga na ta 금chen tsungkawa ga tari ga gomba da hajang tari ga zamoyin ba da gangjen ba da gajin cheba da na de changma ga tari lojong shi go ya mongbo song re de nga su sang lo da na ne zonkawa ga tari gomba te tari mapon bo che tang gomba gar ka mand ko cherezena tawa tonyo tokser ka tong tana ba tser khjiren raman ra yore da te hoina mapon bo che jong ngama da shima 금chen bo che 금chen longchen ba da mapon bo che ni ga parna ya tari tawa ta tser ka wond che na man ra mon bo yo nre lotra se ge gergen na gergen che ki lotra she tanga tari man ra mon bo yo ba jenda nge te te na tari ngara yo ji mare sam.
The Lamrim Khenpo, which is the great gradual path to awakening, written by Je Tsongkhapa, this belongs to the category of sutta, and then Dzogchen Khenpo Sending Arso, resting the mind in repose of comfort and ease, is an extensive treatise on the view of Dzogchen Khenpo. And so it would be better to associate the similarities between Je Tsongkhapa's treatise called the Ngakrim Chenmo, which is the great treatise on the gradual stages of Tantra. And that would be more similar to Dzogchen's resting the mind in repose. There you could find more similarities because those are both on the subject of Tantra.
already?
Yeah. So then in terms of the association of Nippon Rinpoche and Tsongkhapa being both emanations of Manjushri, there should be no contradiction there. That actually Nippon Rinpoche teaches that Je Tsongkhapa's legacy in Tibet is unequaled, great kindness, and he cites it. He cites quotes from Je Tsongkhapa's writings continuously in his own works, and writes about the importance of studying the different compositions and so forth, written by the other master. And so, from the point of view of mutual respect and admiration, there's certainly no contradiction. From the point of view of how they present the view of establishing the nature of emptiness, there may be some distinctions, as there are with all texts, even between omniscient Longchenpa and Nippon Rinpoche. We find these different distinctions on how they assert the establishment of the view, or the clarification of the view. But that also does not indicate that there's any contradiction.
Okay, thank you, Jay.